sponsor of Detroit PBS. Among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving, we support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Learn more at dtefoundation.com.
We help organizations find their voices through what they do and who they impact. We are VVK PR and Creative, a Detroit agency telling the stories of critical issues affecting the big picture and the small moments. Stories at Skyline Heights and on-the-ground influence. We lead with relationships first, solutions always, and with diversity as our compass. VVK PR and Creative.
Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for Day 3 of the 2024 Mackinac Policy Conference. I am Zoe Clark with Michigan Public. It is a full day here at the beautiful Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island. Today, Detroit PBS has a very special announcement that you are not going to want to miss. Later in the morning, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce takes the stage, and then a look at how artificial intelligence is redefining business. And of course, later this afternoon, Governor Whitmer gives her keynote address. But first this morning, I am pleased to kick off the day with the president of this beautiful hotel, David Jorsak. David, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Really, I should probably say thank you for letting us be here.
Oh, no, it's great to have everybody here. The energy is huge.
And so tell me about that, right? Because I know folks are here at the hotel like all summer long, but I mean, you've got 1,500 people descending on this hotel every summer. What is this like?
From a person that's outsider that comes in 3 years ago and experiencing it every year, and seeing the amount of people and the important people in the Detroit regional area and the state that come together all at once. Last night we had 1,500 people in the parlor, shoulder to shoulder. You couldn't turn without hitting somebody that's huge in the state, decision maker. So there's always energy on the island. This is a different kind of energy. Yeah,
and you have quite the job helping to manage all of this energy and, well, deal with all of us.
Well, I think we have an incredible team that deals with everybody, but I do get to now kind of spin through a couple of it and make sure that everything's going right. But the team's always prepared, always ready for this event, and we look forward to it every year.
So talk to me a little bit about the history of this hotel, right? We're always like at the beautiful Grand, the historic Grand, but I mean, built and opening July 10th, 1887.
137 years ago.
Yeah.
138 seasons. So and unlike any other hotel, we've opened 138 times. So most hotels say they have one grand opening. We have a grand opening 138 times. We also closed 137 times. But the opportunity back then in 1887, this building was built in 93 days. It was built by 2 railroads and a steamship line to get people out of back then dirty cities, overcrowded cities, a lot of heat, no air conditioning in 1887, to come up in this beautiful island and have these beautiful breezes. And it's still true today. That's why people come here.
And there's a lot of the hotel that still feels historic and sort of has that sense. I'm curious because you are in the midst of year 2 of a 5-year restoration, which I want to talk a little bit about. But I mean, how do you balance that history with also the needs of the fact that we're living in the future and we need internet and electricity, right? Like, talk to me about how those two things balance with one another.
So, we didn't have televisions in the hotel until 1996. And the idea is that we don't want to have too much technology, but we have to have it be functional. But we also respect that, people come here for relaxation. They come here for the historic element of it. We don't want to be too much in their face. You won't see, big flat screen televisions other than this week. But people want to come here and relax. They want to sit on the porch. They want to wrap themselves in Americana and understand that there's a bygone time. We don't get in cars. We take carriages. So we have to address technology and make sure that they have internet, high speed, and televisions in the room that are operable. But we really want to focus more on the historic element.
Talk to me a little bit about this 5-year restoration. What's the facelift? What are we doing?
It's the facade. So it's 660 feet. It is the world's longest front porch. I challenge anybody to beat us. 660 feet. And so we said it is the postcard. It's when people walk up the hill from Cadott It's the first thing they see of the hotel before they experience it, and they look at the majesty of this building, National Historic Landmark. And we said we need to take care of it. And so we started scraping on this side of it, which is the east side of the building, start scraping the wood. In some cases, we found a chip that was almost a quarter-inch thick of paint. So paint upon paint upon paint.
Oh, just where it's just been painted over and over.
So we gained a few extra square foot on the porch by scraping away paint. And then
are you going to remeasure the porch?
We are going to remeasure it. That's width-wise. Length-wise, it's not going to get any bigger. But we've also done the columns and restoring the columns. And then ultimately what I look forward to the most is we're going to restore the wood front porch. And there's something about walking on an old, it's not going to be old at that point, but walking on a wood front porch, you feel it and all the way through your bones. And so that will go in years 4 and 5.
What's your favorite part of the hotel?
The porch. I mean, getting out on the porch, that's why people came originally in 1887. We used to sit out there throughout the day on a rocking chair. They used to have the bands out there pre-dinner, and then people would retire after dinner out to the porch. They wanted the breezes off the lake, and that's where all the history is.
So for folks who are tuning in, give them something special. What's a story or a little tidbit about the hotel that you can't read in sort of the guidebooks? Give us a behind the scenes something.
A behind the scenes something. Well, we'll talk about the front porch. And so we were talking earlier. So originally, the porch has always been 600. Not always, but since the early part of 1900, was always 660 feet. Mm-hmm. Stuart Woodfill, which was our owner, bought it in 1933. Ripley's, believe it or not, came to him and said, "I heard your porch is 880 feet." And he said, "Sure is." And so it went with that. They wrote it, 880 feet, world's longest front porch. Guinness came back years later and said, "You have the world's longest front porch. We want to do that as a world record. We need to come measure it." So they came and measured it. It was 660 feet. And he said, I get press both ways. I got press from Ripley's, I get press from Guinness. And Guinness, I got even more press because Guinness proved that Ripley's was wrong. And then there's a old tale on the island that the reason it shrunk down to 660 feet is because we measured it in the winter, which isn't totally true.
Not totally. That'd be quite a little bit.
But it's a good story, and if you say it with confidence, most people will believe you.
That's a great story. And there's a lot of stories about the hotel. I mean, you're walking around, right? And there's been like a lot of, of course, movies being filmed and things like that. As a political nerd and junkie, one of my favorite things is walking around and just seeing all the famed photographs, right? Of just like presidents and governor after governor have been here. Who are some of the folks who have visited this hotel?
So we've had 6 presidents visit the hotel. The most recent high-level official was Mike Pence, delivered or visited a couple years ago to the island. We can't see any more presidents coming to the island. It's a little bit of a security risk of being able to jump off the island really quick. But stars, and what I like about this is that there are times where I've walked into somebody on the front porch who I know, either seen on television or an athlete, whatever it might be, and they're not here for that fame and fortune. They're here to be like every other visitor to Grand Hotel and just escape and just, again, sit on a rocking chair, have a nice cocktail or coffee in the morning, and just step away from everybody.
Yeah, everybody's the same here.
Everybody is the same.
David Jerzak, president of the Grand Hotel. Again, thank you for being here, and of course, thanks for having all of us here.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. So let's see. Yesterday, I sat down with the leaders of 2 organizations who are working together to drive economic mobility and promote racial equity in Metro Detroit. We have Matt Elliott here, president of Bank of America, Michigan, and Jason Lee, president and CEO of Junior Achievement of Southeastern Michigan. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
It's really good to see you at the Mackinac Policy Conference. Matt, economic mobility and racial equality have to go hand in hand as we think about the future of Metro Detroit. How are you thinking about this, and how is your work aligned with those goals right now?
We have 4 pillars that really align towards this. One is health. Health is wealth in a lot of ways. The second is support for small business. The third is support for job training and upskilling, which is what we are really partnering with JA on. And the fourth is affordable housing. We figure that those are 4 areas that we as a bank can influence to help drive economic mobility and racial equality in the city of Detroit.
And my understanding is $6 million recently has gone to some of these efforts. Tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, $6 million across that those 4 pillars, really targeted towards organizations like Jason's that are really focused on delivering high quality services to the community that we all love so much.
Yeah. So, Jason, I have been just digging in about all the work that you're doing. Can you tell me a little bit about particularly the financial literacy that you're working on and why you think it's so important for folks in Detroit, for students in Detroit?
Yeah, well, actually, for students in Michigan, so Junior Achievement has been in Michigan for 75 years this year and 105 years globally. So as a nonprofit, financial literacy is one of the key pillars of our work. But it's so important. It's a life skill. We call it Adulting 101 and providing young people those skill sets in financial management that are critical. I think we found during the pandemic that those who had those skill sets fared a lot better than those who did not.
What do we know about the students who haven't gotten these kind of skills? Like, what are the outcomes? What does the future portend if you don't have just basic financial literacy?
Well, it helps in terms of money management is a key component of actually overall wellness of an individual, right? So if you're stressed about money, how does that impact your health? Is a key area that we look into. So when we think about financial literacy, it started out as kind of a byproduct of our work in entrepreneurship. We realized in order for a young person to be a good entrepreneur, they have to be able to manage their money. And so we created a suite of programs around that. We're really excited as Michigan has created a new high school graduation requirement around financial literacy, and the Junior Achievements program correlates directly to the state requirement that's identified by Department of Education.
My understanding is 20,000 students have done some of this work.
Absolutely. So this year, actually closer to 27,000
well,
students.
Who's counting?
We definitely do count.
Because of the financial literacy.
We do. And just having great partners like Bank of America who have came in, they actually have a physical presence in our building, in addition to providing tremendous volunteers to help us do the work. We can't do this work alone. It takes great partnerships to make this happen.
And one of the things about outcomes that it's important is that through the work of financial literacy that JA does, and frankly that we do, at the JA Finance Park, the students actually get a chance to see what it's like to walk into a financial center, which may not seem like much, but if you don't feel comfortable walking in there, you might not walk into a financial center when it comes time for you to open that banking account. And then where are you? It's really important for all students to be in the banking system, and that gives them some familiarity. That's one of the things we're
so much growth.
Yeah, we see a lot of soft skills deficits for a lot of young people. We have a lot of companies that come to us and say the young people can't talk to a customer, or they lack some of those cues and things of that nature. So we do spend a lot of time working on soft skills. Situational analysis, but also just mock interviews, right? So, if they want to go work at a Bank of America, there's a process that Matt and his team take people through, and we kind of just help in terms of giving young people those cues and practice and opportunities.
The other thing too, Zoe, is that through our Better Money Habits curriculum, students are able to learn some basic skills around what, banking products are, but banking concepts are even more important, and it goes to the soft skills concept that Jason was talking about. Best example is understanding the time value of money. So many of our youth, I've got 2 Gen Zs myself, it's you understand what's in front of you now, but you don't understand decisions you make today have really big impacts 5, 10, 20 years in the future. And being able to demonstrate that and make that real, all of a sudden changes behavior and changes trajectory.
There's a lot of folks at this conference who may not interact with Gen Z as much as you are at home or at work. I'm curious what you're hearing from this cohort who is making their voices heard in a way that we haven't seen in a while, particularly in this election year. Jason, I'd love to hear from you first.
Yeah.
What are you hearing?
So we're actually in the process of making some renovations to our building, and they're very vocal. I think that's something that's a key characteristic of that generation. They said that they wanted gender-neutral bathrooms, as an example. There was opportunity for having a break room. We had used it as a storage room, right? So just having those components of the work environment is something, and just being vocal to say that this is something that we really want. I definitely think that the generation has a lot of promise, and we're seeing a lot more companies in terms of hiring, because that is the future, right? So making sure that they're prepared to succeed in this global economy and also understand the implications and opportunities that are available.
Here's one of the things that's really interesting about Gen Z from my point of view. These are children that came of age in the financial crisis. And so
between how people are feeling about the economy as a whole, which they seem pessimistic about, but then asked about their personal stability and financial stability, and they seem okay about.
Yeah.
Where is this disconnect coming from?
I think it requires more study, but in general terms, it's more than likely this disconnect between your lived experience and what you're choosing to believe based on the information you're choosing to consume. And very often, we all tend to, if we want to, be in an information bubble and that reinforces the same message over and over again. So if you tend to, consume information that is, not telling you the entire story, you're only going to get part of the story. And I think that's part of what's going on here. And that's one of the values and the valuable things about this conference is that we all get a chance to get together, get in a room in usually a fairly informal setting, and have real conversations from different points of view. Jason and I, to see each other, would have to go to great lengths in many months to set up a meeting,
Sure.
which happened earlier this year, right? But, we've already talked 3 times today. And that's just one small example of the value of groups and conferences like this that bring together so many disparate voices that are frankly focused on one thing, which is helping Michigan succeed.
So, Jason, I'm curious as we talk about this sort of misperception, I guess, about the economy and also financial literacy. Do you ever think about how to make sure that Gen Z is not, again, just financially literate and figuring out how to kind of keep a sense of their own affairs, but to understand sort of how our economy works so that they are knowledgeable and so that there isn't this pessimism if really maybe there shouldn't be?
Yeah. So one of the programs that JA does provide is actually a program around economics and understanding the micro and macro there. So there's tremendous opportunities for that to occur. The interesting thing is that our schools, because of how our schools are structured here in Michigan, every school system is going to approach this differently in terms of solving the, what is required for graduation. So, we are here to say that junior achievement can be a consistent voice when it comes to financial literacy and also when it comes to economic principles as well as entrepreneurship and career pathways.
And understanding the art of the possible. You can't be what you can't see. And through JA, you can sort of see what it's like, to be a professional, to be an engineer, maybe even be a banker, right? But that expands the possibility of the horizon of a student. And I think it really gives them something to shoot for that's more productive and also more tangible.
Matt, Jason, thanks so much for your time and your efforts.
Thank you very much.
The Future of Work initiative is coverage of what Michigan needs to do to become a top 10 state economically, a top 10 state for people to want to live and play and grow their families in. It's really a discussion of what we want Michigan's future as a whole to be.
If Michigan is going to not just stay competitive, but is going to succeed in the 21st century, then we have to be focused on the future of work. It touches on so many issues that really matter to Michigan, including education, including quality of life, being positioned to take advantage of a really rapidly changing work and workplace.
And we're using work as a vehicle because it's something that we all do. It's something that impacts our daily lives, and it's a way that we can change and transform the places that we live into the places that we want to live.
Learn more about the future of work at onedetroitpbs.org/FOW.
What happens when we ask the right questions? What happens when we nourish a mind? What happens when new ideas take root? What happens when we explore what inspires us? What happens when we work together? No matter how you like to engage with us, we'll always deliver the local shows and content you love and your favorite PBS programs. We are Detroit PBS. Imagine the possibilities.
One Detroit is all about community-based journalism that creates understanding in our region. We see the community as the experts and not us. What we try to do is really take the position of someone who's listening deeply and listening for understanding. We try to create segments that really speak to the depth of the issues that people are telling us about.
Watch One Detroit on Detroit PBS or on the PBS app.
And we are back here at the desk at the Grand Hotel at the 2024 Mackinac Policy Conference. A new report called The State of Micro and Small Business in the Detroit Region is just out from Detroit Future City and the New Economy Initiative. Wafa De Niro, Executive Director of the New Economy Initiative, is here to dig into this report. Good morning. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you dug into the perspectives, the challenges, and the goals of small business in the Detroit region. Let's start with the outlook. And I'm not sure if you were surprised or not, but overall, it's positive.
Yeah, we were actually really surprised. I think that was the most surprising takeaway from the survey was that small businesses are really optimistic about the economic outlook. And because of what we've been hearing about the interest rates and what's happening on the national level, we were really stunned that entrepreneurs feel so optimistic about where the economy is going. It was really pleasantly surprised. So we're happy to hear it, and we were really happy with that outcome.
So, I mean, it's curious too, because again, you were surprised, and just this week, the Chamber put out a poll that actually asked some questions about how people sort of feel about the national economy, which was pessimistic, right? But actually, what the poll shows, the economy is doing okay, and so it does sort of seem to be this disconnect. But when you're actually talking about folks in individual pocketbooks and lives, they're feeling okay. In fact, 61% positive versus 16% negative.
Yeah, I mean, people feel really good about the Southeast Michigan economy, entrepreneurs, and the survey really focused on micro businesses. So those businesses that have 10 and under employees. And so it was a very, it's the mom and pop shops, it's the really the smallest of the small businesses, and they feel good, which is really, those are the businesses that are going to grow, those are the businesses that are going to scale, and those are the businesses that are really our future here in the next 5, 10, 15 years.
What made you want to dig in and try to find this data? What is it going to help you decide for the future?
Yeah, so we do this survey every 2 years to really keep our finger on the pulse of what small businesses are feeling, where we need to put in more resources, where we need to put in more work. We, as the New Economy Initiative, we are a grant funder of the small business ecosystem. So we fund nonprofits that directly support small businesses, and we always want to make sure we're putting our investments where they need to be. So when small businesses tell us capital is their number one issue, we really start to dig into how do we solve that problem and how do we make it easier for entrepreneurs of color, women entrepreneurs to access capital, and how do we build programming to address the issues that the entrepreneurs are facing right now.
Well, and that's exactly where I want to go next, because you also asked about the challenges.
Yes.
And so what did you find?
Yeah, we found, so the biggest challenge that entrepreneurs always say is their biggest challenge is access to capital. And we know this. I mean, the data and the statistics show that specifically entrepreneurs of color have a more difficult time accessing capital. And this is a problem we've been trying to solve for. There's a lot of people who have been trying to address this. So we knew that was gonna rise to the top. One of the other surprises coming out of the survey was that entrepreneurs who said they were connected with business support organizations had better outcomes and felt more generally optimistic about their ability to make more revenue and really be successful in the future, as opposed to the businesses that were disconnected from the small business ecosystem, which tells us that...
And I've seen it actually work and happen in community.
Yeah. When every entrepreneur that needs access to capital can access capital, when every entrepreneur knows how to do their financials and projections and really has a good understanding of their own business, the business side of their business, then we'll know that's success. There's always going to be issues, and we're always going to be looking to chip away at those issues. But once the access to capital no longer becomes an issue, we'll know that that's a win.
Interesting. So I'm curious, I have to bring this up as I was digging into this report. There was a big majority in the number of women who were surveyed, right,
Yep.
as small and micro business owners. So I'm just sort of curious, is this something new that we're seeing? What's behind it?
Yeah.
And also, yay.
Exactly. And it's something new. Women left the workforce at a record rate during COVID. And, we know that we just didn't have the infrastructure to support women. They're generally the caretakers in the families.
Right.
And so during COVID, they left they left the workforce at record numbers, and they found entrepreneurship gives them the flexibility. And it's been, we've seen more women entrepreneurs pop up since COVID than ever before. And really the biggest demographic that's creating small